Welcome to the Freedive Café, episode 12 with Goran Čolak. My name is Donny, host of the Freedive Café. The Freedive Café is long-form interviews that get into the backstories, the training, the challenges, the passions and fears and personal philosophies of the merry band of breath holders known as freedivers. The Freedive Café can be found at freedivecafé.com. All the episodes and show notes can be found there too. There's a Facebook page too. Go to facebook.com/freedivecafépodcast and you'll find it there. Hit the like button and share it with your friends. Sometimes I'll post bits and pieces there and give you some hints about upcoming guests and things like that. This week was pretty special because the podcast has now surpassed 10,000 downloads. I can't believe the show has grown so quickly. It's only been 4 months since I started. So I just want to say thanks again to everyone who listens, everyone who gets in touch and says nice things and keeps me working hard to bring out the episodes regularly. I'd also just like to say thanks to all the guests, all the incredibly inspiring divers out there who spend time sharing their stories and ideas about the nutty, breathless activity that we're all crazy about. And special thanks to the little tribe who are supporting the show through Patreon. If you would like to support the show too, go to freedivecafé.com and take it from there. Today's guest is the mighty Goran Čolak. Goran Čolak started his amateur freediving career in 2006. Less than 1 year later, he won his first Croatian championship and broke several national records. He turned professional in 2011 and joined the exclusive group of freediving professionals around the world. Since then, Goran's achievements in the pool are too numerous to list. There is a boggling array of records and world records, and he is now embarking on a new journey to conquer the depths. But behind the numbers is a fascinating man who loves the challenge of taking himself to the boundaries of human potential through disciplined training. I love talking to Goran. I hope you enjoy the interview too. The show notes for this episode can be found on Goran's page on the website. Comments can be left there too. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, let's dive. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. A lot of people have been asking to have you on the show, and I'm really excited to get the chance to ask you some of these questions.
Well, thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. So you were just in the Philippines. How was that? You were training at Freedive Panglao with Stefan Randik and his crew. Did you have a nice time?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was pretty good. Spent 2 months there, actually a little bit more than 2 months. It was pretty good, except for the start of my trip when we had no electricity for 2 weeks. That was a little bit rough because there were a couple of earthquakes at that region of Philippines, so power was out literally for 2 weeks, which means no internet, no water, no electricity or AC. So it was pretty rough. But other than that incident at the beginning, it was pretty good.
Yeah, that's. It sounds like you got a proper Philippine experience there.
Yeah, something like that. Welcome to Philippines experience. Yeah.
So, Goran, how did you get into freediving? What was your first exposure to the sport?
Well, like for many freedivers of my generation, it's the Luc Besson movie, The Big Blue. When I was a kid, I saw it. Yeah, so it's pretty standard and boring story. Basically, I saw the movie. I started to experiment with freediving. Later on, I found this freediving club back home in Zagreb, and that's pretty much how it all started.
Right. So, Zagreb is the capital of Croatia.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. I a lot of people contact me to talk about the podcast, and there's so many people coming from that part of the world who are really interested. Croatia, Serbia, and that general area. Why do you think that is? Especially the pool disciplines, especially in the pool stuff.
Well, I can't really answer why. It is pretty popular in this region, especially in Croatia and Serbia. I mean, here in Croatia we have a lot of ex-swimmers starting to do freediving, so logically they're more interested in orienting to pool disciplines because that's their natural ambient, let's call it that way. And we also have pretty good results, both men and female in the pool. I know Serbians do as well, Slovenians as well. So yeah, I don't know what the reason is exactly, but we are pretty good in pool disciplines. We do lack some depth though, but again, I hope we're gonna get there as well.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have such a good pool of swimmers, then it's kind of a natural progression for many of them to moving to the freediving in the pool as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the progress that they are having, actually not even the progress, but the start is pretty amazing. When I think about my start and my results after like a couple of months of training, they were nothing compared to what people are starting right now. For example, we have like girls starting with 150 no fins and 200 plus dynamic with fins just like within first week of training. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah, I still have a long way to get to that point, I think.
Yeah. So, I needed a lot of time to get there as well when I started.
Yeah, you've been doing this for quite a long time now.
Yeah, I think it's 10 years now or something like that.
Yeah. So when you first started freediving, did you just do that with some friends, or did you take a course? Like, did you do an AIDA course?
Well, eventually I did an AIDA course, and at this point in time, I'm AIDA instructor trainer. But for first couple of years, I was without a course. I just found out of this club back home called Geronimo, which is interesting name choice for a freediving club. And I just went there, meet a couple of guys and girls over there, and I started training. Like I was trying to catch as much advice from there as possible, and that's pretty much it. And then at that time, the web page or forum, Deeper Blue was quite popular, and people were active there. So I was just browsing and trying to learn as much as possible about freediving and training, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, and of course, 10 years ago it was very different, wasn't it? Like the internet wasn't the way it is now, and
yes,
it must have been quite hard to find information about freediving.
It's quite different, yeah. I wouldn't say it was quite hard, but it was definitely harder than today. Like you couldn't just go online and within 5 minutes find out everything that you want to know. Sometimes it took you days or weeks to get the proper info, but it wasn't that hard, especially if you're interested in it. Even the experience of trying to find out something and to learn it was pretty like gratifying if you're really interested in the subject.
So when you first started training, was it already focused largely on the pool training, or was it kind of mixed between pool and depth?
No, actually, when I started, it was but not mostly, but only pool for, I would say, 2 years probably before I even experienced any depth. So it was only pool and only pool oriented. Actually, at that time, I wasn't really that competitive or that oriented to competitions. I just started because I liked it. And then everything progressed naturally from there. I started competing, I started getting better, and so on and so on. But when I started at the beginning, it was just because I like it. That's it. I had no plans what to do with it.
So when you first started, I mean, usually I ask this question in relation to depth, but was there something about freediving that you found particularly difficult when you first started that you had to overcome, or was it just a nice natural progression for you?
Well, that's hard to answer. To be particularly honest, I don't even remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I think technical aspects of freediving, especially no fins, was pretty challenging for me because I wasn't the good swimmer back then. So to learn proper technique and how to move through the water, that was probably the most challenging thing for me. But I wouldn't say it was challenging and hard. I actually liked every second of it, and learning how to move properly and swim properly and how to apply proper techniques. Everything was really nice for me because I liked it. So whatever I was lacking, it was super cool for me to learn it and to try to apply it properly.
Right. So if you decided to learn something and learn the technique properly, you really put your best behind it until you mastered that technique.
Well, yeah, actually, that's exactly what it was. I mean, my no fins technique was pretty bad till I would say 2011, maybe even 12. At which time I spent like 6 months training I was fortunate enough to be able to train with Croatian national team in swimming. And I spent a lot of time like just going to the gym and swim with them. And eventually after 6, 7, 8 months or something like that, my technique was pretty decent. Yeah. And I enjoyed that experience as well, like any other.
Mm-hmm. So I think that you entered your first competition in 2006, and for sure most people know you for your incredible record in the pool disciplines. From what I can gather from your Wikipedia page, you've held at least 12 world records, depending on the organization. Maybe you could just give us a rundown of your records right now, where you stand right now, because there's just so many records on the Wikipedia page that I kind of like, my eyes started to go blurry after a while when I was reading them.
Well, yeah, there was quite some world records. I think in AIDA it was 4. In CMAS it was more, but like overall world records, I think it was 5. Something like that, with addition up to Guinness World Record on pure oxygen, but I don't really count that as a world record. That was more a stunt. At this particular time, I don't think any of my records is active, so I'm recordless at this point in time.
Well, you certainly have a lot to be proud of, in that regard. How long was it? How long were you training before you got your first record?
World record, you mean?
Yeah, world record.
I think my first one was 2011, AIDA World Championship. It was dynamic with fins, 273. I think I broke record that Dave Mullins was holding before me. And so, yeah, if I started 2006, then that's 5 years.
I mean, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the One Breath documentary. That it was made by Damir Janacek, is that right? Damir Janacek.
Yeah, close enough. Damir Janacek. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Janacek. So you can, for anyone who's listening, you can find this really nice documentary about your life and your training on YouTube. So in the documentary, you can see that you take your training very seriously, right? So at one point, we see you walking up a mountain, you're breathing through a snorkel with the opening taped shut, and then we see you in the gym working out, you're wearing a hypoxic training device, there's a pulse oximeter on the side of the pool. Not everyone trains like this. So how did you come to train like this, and how did you learn these methods?
Well, as I said, I was really always interested in training, like in general sport training, not only training for freediving. I was always kind of a sport freak. And the reason why I need to train like that, I don't know, maybe because I'm not talented enough to just be good effortlessly. So I need to put a lot of effort in my training in order to be decent. So that's one reason is that, I guess, and the other one is that I really like it. I really like the training process and suffering on training. I don't know, somehow I feel good after like really proper and hard trainings. And that was always my approach, like to train hard and then to work out my mental part later, rather than like zoning out and meditating, and then try to add some training at the end. I always train hard and then try to figure out mental part at the end.
You have a coach in this documentary. I forget his name. Is he still your coach now?
Well, actually, no. He's not the Croatian national team coach anymore. He was not only my coach, he was coaching the members of entire Croatian team. But since he was basically my neighbor and from the same city, obviously, as I am, we were working mostly together. Most of other team members, Croatian national team members, were not from Zagreb, so basically, even though he was training everybody, he was mostly working with me because it was most convenient and most easy.
Right. And was he somebody that really influenced your training methods and taught you a lot about the best ways to train, or was that something that you just learned yourself?
Well, he definitely did influence me a lot. Not only training-wise, but in all aspects of my life, because I was spending a lot of time with him for, let's say, 5 or 6 years. We were basically spending each day together, like decent amount of time per day. So I learned a lot from him, training-wise, and I would say everything-wise. And I think I helped him as well. It was fortunate for both of us, so I can work with somebody with a lot of experience, not only in freediving, but in sport in general, and for him that he can work with one of the top freedivers in the world at that time. So I think it was good for both of us.
You do so much training for your diving. I've seen you doing the hypoxia training, and what other kinds of training methodologies do you use to support your free diving, like strength training or endurance training? Like, what other kinds of training techniques do you like to use?
Well, I kind of combine everything. It's just a matter of periodization, and it's a matter of discipline that I'm training for. So for pool, obviously, I'll do more gym, more pool, and more dry workouts, less stretching, let's say. Then for depth, it's gonna be a little bit different. And also, it's different when you consider, is it the beginning of the season when you're in your base training and doing a lot of gym and a lot of everything, or if you are at the last phase of your training before competition when you're basically tapering and doing only specific training for that discipline. So it varies like with time and everything, but basically I'm trying to follow proper periodization like any athlete in any sport would basically follow. So you start with basic training, you go for something in between basic and specific, you end up with pure specific, and then tapering at the end.
Right. So could you maybe just outline a little bit how the periodization works over the course of a year and or in preparation for the season?
Well, let's say you can peak. You can try to peak as many times as you want, but realistically, you can, let's say, peak twice per year. So I guess best approach is 1 or 2 peaks per year, and then doing periodization for that. So your training time in that case would be either 10 or 12 months if you're peaking once per year, or it would be 5 or 6 months if you're peaking twice per year. So let's say you have second example, you want to peak twice per year and you have roughly 6 months to train, in which case you will start with basic training, let's say for 3 months, then you will go into mixed training period in between basic and specific for a month and a half or 2, and then you will end up with pure specific for either a month and a half or a month. And let's say tapering, that's really individual, so it's anything from 3-4 to 10 days, let's say, roughly said. Of course, it differentiates in between persons, but in general, that's kind of a rule.
Have you been heavily influenced by any other freedivers in your approach to training?
I don't think so. Yeah, not really. There are a couple of freedivers that I really respect, but I don't think any of them influenced my training in in any serious way. Of course, I was looking what other people are doing, so I was trying to pick up small things from this guy and or that guy, but none of them really influenced my training by himself.
So let's talk a little bit about static.
Okay.
You interesting question. When you first attempted a static, when you first started your freediving journey, and the first time you held your breath, how long did you hold your breath for?
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because the only discipline that I was good at the beginning was static. So everything else was pretty bad for me. But static was always a good one. I remember as a kid when I was like 9 or 10, I was able to hold my breath for like 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
So that was decent. And then when I started my freediving, at first competition that I entered, which was literally 3 days after I went to my first freediving training session, I did a static of 5 minutes. And then within I guess, month or two, I set I think national record, which was close to 7 minutes. So that was good from the beginning, let's say.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive times for a beginner. Yeah, just out of curiosity, what were you doing when you were a kid that you were holding your breath for 4 minutes or more?
Not much. We just, we have pretty nice coastline here in Croatia. So when I was a kid, me and my family, we spent a lot of time at the sea every summer. So basically, I was just snorkeling and goofing around, and at some point, me and my friends decided to time each other to see how long can we hold our breaths, and that was pretty much it for fun.
Yeah, and you have...
the funny story, now I actually remember, at that time, there was some free diving in the media, but very little, and then we heard an article, actually it was a radio interview, and national record holder at that time, which was a girl, actually was holding Croatian national record of 4 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that. And I was a 9-year-old kid, and I already held my breath with my friends for 4.5 minutes. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that 4 minutes 20 is actually my static best at the moment. So
I'm sure you can do it.
Well, yeah, I'm working on it. Yeah, the problem is here in Taiwan, it's we don't have this culture of pool training, so it's really hard to get access to a pool to train regularly and train things like static. So, we got some really amazing swimming pools in the city, but they just don't understand that what we want to come into the swimming pool for, with fins and wetsuits and this kind of thing, So, but I'm working on it. I know a lot of places are having the same problem. I'm fortunate enough that here in Croatia, they are really into freediving. People at the pools and society in general. So we have zero problems with training at the pool. Everybody knows what freediving is. Nobody is surprised when you showed up with a monofin on a pool. So it's pretty good, especially here in my city, Zagreb, where the mayor is really into freediving as well, and he actually taught me as well. So basically, I got from the city a line in a pool every day for 2 hours, so I can train whenever I want, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so jealous of you. I had a friend. He asked me the other day because he's really interested in the static apnea discipline. Of course, in the major organizations and the courses, we're always taught that hyperventilation is not to be used. Do you use hyperventilation when you do one of your long statics?
Well, actually, the thing with hyperventilation is that if you're reading medical books, then hyperventilation is defined as any breathing higher than tidal breathing. So there is no warm-up that is not hyperventilation. There's just degrees of hyperventilation. Is it just a small one, middle one, or a huge one? So if you're doing any kind of breathe-up, except breathing as you're breathing right now, sitting and listening this interview, you're definitely hyperventilating. So yes, I am hyperventilating, obviously, medically speaking. There is just degree of hyperventilation. I might say that for static, I breathe the most, definitely. It is not heavy and super heavy hyperventilation, but I definitely breathe the most for static out of all disciplines.
But you're not using I guess what I'm referring to is like some like fire breathing or extreme noisy hyperventilation, like what we see in the sort of like the funny parts of the Big Blue movie when people are passing out before they even make their dive attempts?
No, in my case, it's just I don't know how to explain this to be as simple as possible. You know, sometimes when you're tired and you do like this big inhale and exhale, like you know, something like that. So basically, as similar as that as possible in relaxed manner, big inhale and then longer passive exhales for, let's say, 5, 7, or 8 times. That's basically my breathe up for static.
Hey guys, are you enjoying the show? Sorry to interrupt, but let me make a little call to action. The Freedive Café is free and always will be, but it's a lot of work. Post-production on an episode takes many hours, which I usually try to squeeze into the lunch breaks of my real-life day job. Not to mention the hours spent in correspondence with the world's top freedivers, preparing for episodes and actually doing them, sometimes at ungodly hours due to the time differences. Everything is done on a shoestring budget with the most basic of equipment, and I do everything myself. If you love the show, if you appreciate what I'm doing and want to see the show improve and want to hear more episodes each month, you can do that by joining the Patreon tribe. If you don't know what Patreon is, you can just go to freedivecafé.com and click the support the podcast button. That will take you to Patreon, where you can choose to donate a few dollars to the show each month. Any amount is appreciated, and there are some goals and rewards too. For example, once I reach 35 patrons, I will start releasing 3 episodes a month instead of the regular 2. We're now only 8 patrons away from making this happen, and once we hit 50 patrons, I'll be starting with the monthly Q&A episodes with a returning guest. So if you love the show and you want 4 episodes each month, head over to patreon.com/freedivecafe and join the tribe. Big love to all the patrons already supporting the show. Thank you so much. What is your favorite discipline?
That's a hard question. I don't know. Whichever discipline I'm training for currently, that's my favorite one. I actually like them all. To be perfectly honest, I enjoy everything. I enjoy pool. I enjoy depth. When I'm training for static, I actually enjoy static. Static is terrible and boring, but when I'm spending time training exclusively static, I actually enjoy that as well. So whatever for I'm training at any particular moment, that's my favorite one. But let's say in general, depth is more enjoyable than a pool. I think everybody will agree on that.
Yeah, so a week or 2 ago, I think you broke the Croatian national record in constant weight, and you dived to 115 meters.
Yeah.
In the documentary, it's I think maybe it's your coach that states that you would wish to achieve in depth what you've already achieved in the pool. So is it true that you're now turning your attention more towards the depth disciplines?
Well, I would like to. Yeah, that was my plan from 2 years ago when I was at the peak of my pool performance. Let's say 2014, end of 2014. That was like the end of my pool dominance, which started in 2009 or 10. Let's say. In that time, I was practically unbeaten in a pool, more or less. So at that time, I actually decided I will do depth, but I couldn't quite force myself to do it exclusively. I was always leaning to the pool, and I always wanted to do a pool as well, which resulted in I guess a bit lower results in a pool and not that fast progress in depth that I was expecting, because I couldn't just quit the pool totally and focus myself on depth, which is proper thing to do. But I was trying to do everything. Which is kind of still the case, but I'm actually trying, and that is my plan still, to leave the pool disciplines and to concentrate only on depth. When will that happen? I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So you feel like in order for you to really go to that next level in the depth disciplines, you need to kind of leave the pool disciplines behind for a while and focus exclusively on the depth?
Well, yes, that doesn't mean that I should stop training pool completely. But definitely that I should stop aiming to win gold medals at Worlds. I mean, that ain't gonna happen. If I want to focus on depth, I will not be within top 5 people at the planet in the pool. It's just not realistic and not feasible. I mean, if you look at any of top couple depth freedivers, none of them is doing any serious pool results. So it's just normal. You just can't do everything. It's hard to even do all disciplines within the pool or all disciplines in depth. And then if you want to do all of them in a pool together with all of them in a depth, that's not really feasible.
Yeah. If you want to be at the top level, I guess you have to
exactly.
You have to be specific in what you want to achieve, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I got a couple of sort of more technical or questions that people have put to me. This is something that I've come across quite often, actually, in the people that I meet. Is that they are, maybe in a situation where they're kind of like, maybe they like depth more, but they're kind of forced to train in the pool just because of their location. So they really want to get better in the pool. But I got one friend, for example, when he does his max attempts in the pool, he kind of like panics and bails out of the dive early. Like he has some kind of psychological barrier that he can't seem to break down. And I've actually come across this quite a lot. Did you ever personally have an experience like this, or have any suggestions for him to get over that problem?
Well, not really. Sometimes when nowadays when I'm training for something really big and when I'm trying to do a max dive close to my competition or record attempt or whatever, sometimes you're not there, and then you quit from a dive and you bail out. But that doesn't happen that much. And at the beginning of my career, it didn't happen ever, basically. It's the matter of how much you want it. If you're forcing yourself to do a max attempt, then the chances are that you will bail out and that you ain't gonna do it. But if you really want to do a max attempt, and if you're highly motivated, then you're gonna do one. I have a friend at home as well, and he's struggling with max attempts and always bailing out at 100 meters, not being hypoxic or anything. He just doesn't feel comfortable and he bails out. So I asked him, okay, let's say hypothetically, if I put 10,000 euros on a table and tell you to dive till you black out, would you dive or not? So it's just a matter of motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it is just motivation though. I mean, for me personally, if I go into the pool and I like training in the pool, at no point do I really get anxious. I'll push myself until I really start to feel that probably it's not a good idea for me to keep going anymore, and at that point I come up. But I know some people who just the temptation, I guess, to break the surface and come up is just too strong. And I'm kind of that way with depth. I have to really, really feel comfortable when I'm diving deep to actually dive deep.
Well, with depth sorry to interrupt you. With depth, it's different. With depth, you actually need to feel comfortable diving deep, and you need to be in peace with the depth that you're doing, because many things can go wrong in depth, and then at the end you can actually injure yourself if you're not relaxed, if you have contractions, if you're going too deep. So with depth is different. So with depth, I completely understand, and I would say that if you don't feel comfortable within your dive, especially if you're going deep, you should definitely turn and go back. But in a pool, it's completely different. I mean, nothing can happen. So if you're not completely comfortable or you're having early contractions, I mean, who cares? Just keep swimming. And if you've decided before your max attempt that you're gonna push and see how far can you go, if you really decided that, then you're gonna do it. You ain't gonna bail out early. You can bail out early only if you're not motivated enough to do a dive, or if you're scared to find out how far can you go, which is case with me before big competition. I basically don't want to know, because if the dive is going to be good, then it's good, that's fine, but nobody can guarantee me I'm going to repeat a dive at the Worlds again. And if it's bad, then that's terrible, and it means that I messed up something terrible in my training. So it's just there's no winning scenario in me for me in that particular case. So this is why sometimes I bail out if I'm trying to do a max attempt close to the competition. But yeah, that's my personal experience in case.
Right. So do you have any kind of methods or techniques that you use to prepare yourself mentally before dives or before competitions? Like, are you practicing some kind of visualization or meditation or some other method?
Well, I don't meditate, but yeah, let's say I do visualization. I try to go through my dives many times before I actually dive. It's not something that I do intentionally before my dive or something. It's something that I do basically every day, many times. So I'm always going through my dive because I'm just so into freediving. So every day after training and before training, and like if I can sleep at night, I just go through all of my dives, thinking about what can be done better and how is my dive looking. And when I'm doing the dive, then I just try to separate the dive into sections. Let's say if you're doing long dynamic, which is pretty like boring and you suffer a lot doing it, then if you're doing, let's say, I don't know, something close to 300 meters or something crazy long, then starting to think about that distance as soon as you get uncomfortable, which will probably be around 70 meters, that's gonna kill you mentally, definitely, because it's already hard and you're not even close being halfway there. So you need to separate the dive in the section of, like, say, 50 meters and think about your technique or about your speed or something, and not about like distance that you're gonna achieve at the end.
So as far as visualization goes, that's something that you just kind of do automatically. Like maybe during the day you might be kind of like daydreaming a little bit about your dreams, about your dives, like imagining yourself performing them in the best way possible.
Yeah, exactly, daydreaming.
You just said there that, you know, if you do a really long dive, like a dynamic of, you know, close to 300 meters, that you would start to feel uncomfortable already around 70 meters. Is that like, how do you mean uncomfortable?
Well, you know that first urge to breathe and first discomfort that you have in a pool? Well, in my particular case, that's around 70 meters. Then my first proper contraction is later around, I don't know, depends on a day, but anything from 130 to 150 meters in dynamic twin fins. But that first uncomfort and urge to breathe is already around 70, 80 meters, basically.
Right. So if you're having your first contraction around 130, then potentially you can have a lot more than 100 meters to go dealing with the urge to breathe and contractions during one of these long dynamics.
Well, yes, exactly. That's why I said if you start thinking about your target distance as soon as the first discomfort appears, then you just snap mentally, because you just started your dive and it's already hard and you're just basically starting. So it's pretty hard on you mentally. So this is why I need to separate dive into sections. But then again, if you've decided to do a dive, it's gonna be hard. There is no such thing as doing a world record easily, because if that's the thing, then everybody would do world records. So it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be suffering. You're gonna have contractions and lactic legs and everything. So you just go with it, deal with it.
Yeah, I think that maybe this, like these people that I mentioned who are having experiencing these mental barriers in their pool training, perhaps what needs to be focused on is becoming very comfortable with the urge to breathe and with their contractions. Do you know what I mean? Like, for some people, the contractions there's something inherently scary about them, and maybe they don't quite overcome that fear.
Yeah, it might be. The one trick that I was using before to deal with discomfort during pool disciplines and long swim was I would visualize my dive to be hard. I wouldn't visualize them, it's going to be nice and easy and smooth and I'm going to dive, it's going to be brilliant, I'm going to surface, I'm going to be happy. I was visualizing them completely differently. So it's going to be extremely hard. I will be suffocating. It's going to be terrible. My leg is going to be burning. So I was basically ready for it before I started my dive. So I was kind of doing, let's say, reverse psychology trick on myself. And that actually helped for me. I don't know, maybe for somebody that will be terrible. But for me, preparing myself and expecting the dive to be hard resulted in, when the dive became hard, that everything was fine, because I was expecting that anyway.
That's an interesting technique. What do you?
Bit unorthodox, definitely.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess we all find out what is best for us in the end, right? If we put enough effort and time into the training.
Yeah, exactly. There is no such thing as universal truth, like something that works for everybody all the time. We are all different at the end, so you need to find something that works for you.
Yeah, and that also brings me to another kind of technical question, which is like what do you think are the best methods for training CO2 tolerance and adapting to low levels of O2? And do you think that, I mean, do you use like traditional CO2 tables? Or do you think that they're overrated? What's your opinion about this?
Well, I do CO2 and O2 trainings. I don't use traditional CO2 tables. So the traditional table would be when you start your I don't know, let's say you're holding your breath for 1 minute and you start with 60-second recovery and you end up with 5 seconds recovery or whatever, holding your breath for a minute. So that would be traditional CO2 table. Is that right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Okay. So, in my personal opinion, like 80% of that table is completely waste of time, because at the beginning, with rest of minute and 50 seconds and 40 seconds, even 30 seconds, that's not CO2.
You're already back to normal by that point.
Yeah, that's basically nothing. So the only proper training that you're getting is last 3 minutes of your training when you have really low recoveries. So my CO2 table is close to maximum holds all the time with 5 seconds recovery all the time for 30 minutes. That's proper CO2 table. Because in that case, you always have high CO2 and you're really training high CO2. With O2, you're always doing as long as possible holds, trying to drop your O2 as low as possible with long recoveries in between. Basically, the longer the better. So that's it in my case. I never do traditional tables because I think like majority of time within that table is waste of time. But that's my approach and my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's from what I hear, and obviously I talk to a lot of people about this kind of thing. It seems to be a lot more people are becoming aware of this kind of table and this way of training, and it's just making a lot more sense. Like a one breath CO2 table, and
yes, exactly.
A one breath empty lung training and stuff like this, because it just maximizes the efficiency of the time that you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty logical when you think about it. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we still have to learn about freediving. I think we're kind of catching up to a more kind of logical and scientific level at this point, where maybe before in the last 10 years or 20 years, there was a lot of things that were quite questionable about the way people would train.
Well, yes, definitely. And now that the sport looks more and more decent and professional, and now when you see athletes, they more or less, at least if you go to like big level competition, like say worlds, especially in the pool, most of them they know what they're doing, especially like top 10 or the top 15 guys. They're all well trained, well conditioned. They know exactly what they're doing. Their training is periodized properly, so everything is pretty good in comparison with, let's say, what was happening 10 years ago when everybody was doing something completely different.
Yeah, just quickly to go back to that CO2 table that you were talking about. When you said that you would do max holds and then 5 seconds recovery, would you do a max hold and then you just stop when you feel that it's enough, or do you count like a certain number of contractions or something like that?
Well, in that particular case, if I'm doing a table, I actually don't even use a stopwatch or anything. I just hold my breath as long as I can. I take 1 or 2 recovery breaths, depends on what I've decided before I started. So either 1 or 2 recovery breaths. And I just continue doing that for 30 or 40 minutes. I'm not interested at time or anything. It's always, let's say, 2 recovery breaths in between, and I always hold my breath as long as I can. It's not like up to samba, obviously, every time, but it's like as long as you can do it, as long as you can push yourself. And your recovery is constant. It's always 2 recovery breaths, and you just keep doing it. I'm not interested in time at all. The only thing I'm interested in is high CO2, and I'm getting that, and that's it.
Yeah, I think these traditional tables, I think the thing about them is that they're basically easy. So people they kind of fool themselves into thinking that if they do these tables 3 or 4 times a week, then it's giving them some big advantage. But the CO2 tables that we're talking about with the small recovery times are so much more psychologically demanding that most people probably are not ready to do that kind of training, in a sense.
Well, yeah, well, okay, I'm not saying that if you just started and discover freediving, you should immediately go to as hardcore training as possible. Obviously, you start with something easy and fun, and then you progress from there.
Yeah. Trust me, there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this interview who are going to drop their traditional tables straight away.
Well, that's good. That should happen. If you've been freediving for more than a year, then it's time to drop traditional CO2 tables.
When you're diving in depth, and I'm just, the issue of equalization comes up so often. Is that something you ever had any trouble with? Was it like something you really had to develop, your ability to equalize, or did it come naturally to you?
Well, to be honest, I'm still developing it because that's my only issue in depth at this particular moment. I've just uploaded my 150 constant weight video on Facebook, so you can look at it. It looks like a 50-meter snorkeling dive, and it felt like that as well. Only I'm limited with equalization, so I would definitely, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it. I'm still struggling with it, and there is still a lot of room to improve in my particular case. But yeah, I'm doing my best, let's say.
Do you think that the mouthful is being taught too early to people, or being used as a kind of as a crux to take people deeper when they should actually be decreasing their residual volume or increasing their failure depth first?
Well, yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, it depends to whom you're talking about mouthful and in what particular time in their development and career. But I'm definitely for learning mouthful a bit later, once you actually develop proper technique, proper duck dive, proper knowledge of all disciplines, and when you develop comfort in water as well. Only at that time you should actually start aiming for getting deeper and learning mouthful and all those advanced techniques. So it's basically just normal and logical development, starting with simple things, mastering them, and then advancing to more complicated things.
Right. But I mean, a lot of people will, do their I-4 course and learn the mouthful, when they're diving around 28, 30 meters, and then just start to maybe try to use the mouthful from that point on.
Well, yeah, everybody is trying to cheat their way into better results as fast as possible and as easy as possible. So when I'm lecturing, I always say there is no such thing as shortcuts to success. You need to go through all of those boring and painful steps if you actually want to be really, really good at something. There's no shortcuts, and yeah.
Yeah, one thing I learned, and I will actually take this opportunity to say this to the listeners, because my failure depth when I first started freediving was around 25 meters. And between 25 and 30 meters, it didn't really improve very quickly. I started to think that I need to learn the mouthful, and that's the only way that I'm going to go deeper. I was training in Moalboal in the Philippines with Jean-Paul Francois, and he told me basically to forget about the mouthful and just keep diving with Frenzel. And yeah, because I trained every day, I guess, and because I didn't try too hard, I ended up diving to 43 meters with just the Frenzel. So I think it's really important to realize that, maybe what you think is a kind of a physical barrier is actually just you're just rushing through things, and that you need to wait for the physiological adaptation to come.
Well, yes, I completely agree. I mean, with Frenzel, you should be able to dive. I mean, no matter how big or small your lungs are or anything, you should be able to dive in between 40 and 50 meters with Frenzel, definitely, for sure. And nowadays, you can sometimes see complete beginners coming to, even at Worlds, with all this fancy equipment, like super fancy nose clip, top edge wetsuits, best monofin you can find on the market, like better equipment than I'm using, and then they announced like 23 meters, which is completely ridiculous. I mean, within those depths, you should still be using plastic fins and a mask, and not all this professional gear and diving to as shallow as 20 or 30 meters. So you need to really go step by step, and as you need to go, so first you need to be comfortable in the water, get deeper with the Frenzel, start feeling comfortable at depths within 30 and 40. Then you can start learning mouthfeel and go deeper. Then you can ditch the mask, introduce the nose clip so you can get even more deeper. Then you can start thinking about buying better suit and better fin to get even a little bit more advantage, and so on.
Yeah, it's really important for people to hear this. Because, safety is a big concern as well. And it seems like more and more it's becoming accepted to do less safe things in freediving. The culture, it seems to be a bit of a culture of squeezing, where squeezing is accepted as an inevitable part of the freediving progression. But I think
which is completely wrong, obviously.
Yeah, most experienced divers who've been diving for 5-10 years just know that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you will never ever get squeezed in your entire freedive career. Maybe you're fortunate enough and that's never going to happen to you. I mean, it can happen. It can happen to everybody. It can happen to me or to any of top level freedivers. I mean, it can happen. But it's not something that should be normal and that you shouldn't be concerned about and that you should say, well, everybody squeezes, whatever. It's not normal and it's a problem, obviously. It can happen. Like in boxing, you can get knocked out, but that's not normal and not something that you should aim for, obviously.
Yeah, I was just watching the video from the live stream from the World Championships, and I'm going to ask your opinion about this because it's an issue that has kind of come up on the Facebook forums in the last few days and last week. But I noticed that, there were something like 7 blackouts in the competition. Some people are saying that that there's something wrong here, that it's accepted that it's a natural part of the competition diving. Some people say that a blackout should immediately disqualify somebody from a competition. I even believe that's the case with the CMAS competitions, right? Yes,
it is. If you black out, you're banned from the rest of that competition, yeah.
What do you think about this? Do you think it's a good thing? Or do you think it should...
I actually think it's a good thing. And I would do that. If you black out... I would ban that athlete for the rest of the competition. I would maybe differentiate surface blackouts and underwater blackouts. Maybe I will let surface blackouts go as something that's okay, it happened. But if you black out underwater, I would definitely disqualify you for the rest of competition in the pool and in depth.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that as freediving becomes more popular, and now with, like we saw in the World Championships, that we see the whole thing being broadcast through the dive eye, the underwater camera drone. Maybe the image that is projected to the people who are watching needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, it's definitely not good. I mean, it's not only the blackouts as well. It's a number of disqualification. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think I am, in any days that male athletes were diving, it was more yellow and red cards than white cards, which is definitely not normal, and that should be avoided. It's definitely not a good picture that we're painting for anybody who's watching the sport. And I just recently had a chat with Guillaume. He was visiting the Philippines as well. The French Federation and the people are working towards the goal that freediving should be at the Olympics in Paris in 2024, when Paris should be hosted the Olympic Games, which would be amazing for the sport. Obviously, it's not a certain thing yet, but it's a work in progress, and it's probably going to be depth. So not pool, but depth. And then we chatted about what's actually going to happen if hypothetically that happens. So we have hypothetically this amazing thing for freediving, depth competition at the Olympic Games, which is amazing. And but what would happen? I mean, can you imagine people going to the Olympics? I mean, what would they announce? Would they announce safe, or they would do anything to win? I think it's the second thing. I think if at this particular point you introduce freediving into Olympics, you would have like 90% of blackouts, because everybody will just go for it. Because there's no bigger glory, obviously, in any athlete's career than being like Olympic champion. So anybody who has even a slightest chance of winning will just go for it. So we definitely need to figure out a way to limit somehow, to either limit the announcements or to reach to people and to convince them to start announcing a bit shallower. But it's hard, because when you're an athlete, you always want to do as much as possible. So it's really hard to find a way how to do that, but it should definitely be done. How, I'm not sure.
And it seems to me that, you know, the whole point of freediving anyway, and I'm just an amateur, so I can't really talk about this with any kind of authority, but just my opinion. But it seems like freediving should be about demonstrating to, at least in competition, it should be about demonstrating to others how well you've mastered your own body and your own mind.
Well, actually, I agree with you. In my particular case, I look at the blackout as a personal failure, to be honest. I failed miserably and I misjudged what I'm able to do. This is how I looked at blackout if it happens to me. But fortunately for me, it didn't happen for, I don't know, last 10 years. Didn't have any blackouts on competition or on trainings, and I had only one disqualification in Finland last year. So yeah, I think everybody should aim to that. I'm doing maximums a lot. But for example, when I'm training for static, for that Fazal competition in Dubai, I'm doing I don't know, probably like 50 maximum holes per week. And when I say maximum, I say maximum up to like edge of Samba. And I never ever not only had a blackout, but I never had somebody assist me on a surface. It's just matter of control and something that you learn along the way.
Yeah, maybe if somebody is in that mindset that it's acceptable to black out, and considering that it also puts your safeties at risk and maybe gives a bad image to somebody who's looking at the sport, maybe they should take a step back and question their motivation for what they're doing, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not that, well, in a pool, nobody should ever black out. That's definitely it. I mean, you maybe can get disqualified by deep in your mouth or something, but in a pool, nobody should ever black out. That's a certain thing. In depth, it's a little bit different. You know, you get there and then there is just one way of going up. I mean, you can't cheat and bail out from your dive early. So in depth, it can happen, obviously, and blackouts can happen. And even though I so far never had one, I'm sure sometime in my career I'm going to have a blackout in depth. I mean, it's going to happen. But you definitely should aim to limit that as much as possible. I mean, it's not normal and it shouldn't happen. If everything is all right, if you have normal conditions, if you feel normal, and if everything is all right, you just shouldn't have a blackout.
Yeah, and I think what the issue I'm raising here is that it's kind of the normalization of the blackout is what seems to be the issue, that it's more accepted that that's going to happen, where it seems to me it should be an exceptional situation and not a normal situation.
Well, yeah, because nowadays, I mean, when you look at the announcement list, I mean, nobody says that publicly, but when you're looking at your friends, first thing you're going to say, oh, this guy's going to black out, oh, this one's going to black out as well. So basically, it's what you say. It's a normal thing, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, you said that that equalization is the issue for you now in your depth training. Is that because you're just diving so deep that you don't have the air to equalize, or is that because your ears are a little bit like not great for equalization? What's the issue there?
I don't think there is such thing as having ears that are not great for equalization. Okay, if you have some kind of medical issue, that's different story. But if you're able to equalize to 90, then you should be able to equalize as deep as anybody else, basically. So I think it's just a matter of relaxation and practice and mastering your mouth fill to perfection, let's say. And yeah, it's basically in my case, I just have no air left in my mouth to equalize. That's the thing.
Right. Do you have any kind of like, do you look after your ears in a particular way? Do you have any kind of ear care routine or something like that, or you just don't think about it?
Ear care routine? I don't know. I try to not expose my ears to wind. Let's say when you're on a boat or driving in a car, I always try to have a hat or something covering my ears so they're not on a wind, especially when they're wet, like after the dive or something like that. But pretty much that's it. I don't know. I don't really have any special care.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of do you do some kind of like equalization practice on dry? You know, like do you wear a nose clip and like visualize your deep dives and practice equalization at the same time or something like that?
Well, you're asking this question to a wrong person. Actually, I'm still learning all these things myself. Actually, I did start it just recently, like literally a couple of days ago. I started to do that and to do these mouthful drills with a balloon and try to do FRC holds up to contraction and then try to use my mouth fill through the contraction so I can have better control of my glottis if I have contractions at depth and so on. So basically, I'm still learning and experimenting with all this. It's easy to equalize, let's say, easy, air quotes, easy to equalize till 100 meters or something like that. But then when you start and if you're capable of going deeper, then you really need to maximize like every small bit of air, and you need to pretty much do everything perfectly if you want to get 120, 130 meters.
Yeah, so you're just at a beginning. This is like a new stage of your journey, and you're starting to expand your knowledge in this area. So maybe we'll come back to you in a year or two and see how you're getting on.
Exactly. You should ask me the same question in like 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, so I saw in the documentary you were playing chess. It seems like you really like chess. And you said that you're a really competitive person, and you've been known to lose 2 nights of sleep because you lost an online chess game. Do you feel competitive like this in freediving as well? Do you think it could eventually be like now that you're moving more into the depth disciplines, is that kind of like worry you that your competitiveness could actually be a safety issue when you start diving in competition?
Well, first of all, yes, I'm that competitive in pretty much everything that I do. Even if I like playing a fun game with my grandma, I'm gonna go for it. So yeah, I'm pretty competitive, but I don't think it's gonna be a safety issue because I do as deep or as long as I'm capable of. I will not just go deeper than I'm capable of just because I want to win, because that ain't gonna result in me winning. That's going to result in me being the last because I'm going to get the red card. So my approach is different. I'm going to go as deep as I'm capable of going. That's it. So if somebody is capable of doing more, then that's it. I've lost. Yeah, it is what it is.
Do you have some like, what do you think is the best specific pool training that you can do to help you prepare for depth? I know that's a bit of a general question, but I have so many people who contact me about this who they're living in like New Zealand or Canada, and it's always the question that I get is, like what should I do in the pool?
Well, yeah, it's not easy to give an answer on a question like that, but if I need to give as simple answer as possible, I would say FRC and exhale dives.
You mean like in like a 5 meter pool or something like that, like using
even if you don't have a deep pool, even if it's just a normal pool, instead of doing fully packed inhale dynamics, just do it exhale. You're gonna mimic the underwater condition doing depth as close as possible and as close as you can within conditions that you have. So if I'm in that particular scenario, I would do everything as close as possible to conditions that I'm gonna have during the dive, and that's no lungs, or actually low volume of air in my lungs. So I would do everything exhale.
Right. So exhaling, FRC, reverse packing.
Okay. Obviously, like with everything, you need to start gradually. So you start with gentle FRC, then bigger FRC, then exhale. Then if you are completely comfortable with that, you can even go to reverse pack. But obviously, you need to be careful not to injure yourself.
How would you, if you do empty lung dynamic in the pool, how do you do that without just scraping along the bottom of the pool like a cheese grater?
Well, you keep shallow. That's pretty much it. Or you put a wetsuit that's buoyant, so you ain't gonna be scraping the floor.
Okay.
Like you put 5 mil wetsuit, and I don't care how skinny you are and how much did you exhale, you ain't gonna scrape the floor. Yeah. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit, but in my case, even if I put normal triathlon suit on, I'm okay if I'm not deeper than like 1 meter or something. Yeah, now at Panglao, I was actually doing the same thing with just in my speedos. I mean, the pool there is relatively shallow. It's like 1.6 meters. But yeah, if you're moving, even if you're a bit negative, I mean, if you're moving, you can still maintain your buoyancy and not be scraping the floor, the bottom.
Have you done much traveling around the world? Have you visited many different dive sites, or have you kind of been limited because of your training and your specialization to just sort of staying in Croatia and training, or have you actually had the chance to visit many places?
Well, actually, yeah, I've been around. Let's say, just now I need to do my passport again, because in the last 3 years I went through all the pages. There is no more space for stamps. So yeah, I travel a lot. So let's say this year I'm now in my apartment for 3 days, but altogether I spent maybe 2 or maximum 3 months this year in my apartment. Everything else was on a road. It's always somewhere. So this year it was first was Dubai, then it was Italy, then I went to Philippines, now I'm going to Turkey. So yeah, it's always something, and I do travel a lot.
So what are your favorite places to dive? Like, where do you find the nicest water? Where do you find the nicest communities of people, the most supportive for freediving?
Oh, well, that's a really hard question. If I need to answer about...
Well, if I said, if I told you that you could only dive in one place until the day that you die, only one place, where would you choose?
Oh my God.
Put you on the spot.
I would choose Croatia, because I like our sea and our coastline. But training-wise, if you say you can only train at one particular place, then I would say Dean's Blue Hole, probably. Yeah, so let's say training condition-wise, that's the best place. It's not the most nice place to be at, but if you want to train in pool water conditions, no thermocline, no current, always easily accessible from the shore, etc., then yeah, that's probably the best place on the planet. But if you want more, except of that, then there are definitely other options.
Yeah, Dean's Blue Hole basically has been the I always ask this question and everybody says Dean's Blue Hole. I think it would be interesting. There must be some other place in the world, like there must be some place hidden in the Philippines or Indonesia where there's some like beautiful blue hole just sitting there. Like you can't even see it because it's surrounded by mountains or something like this.
Well, maybe. I've been searching. I just recently had a chat with a friend, like, where should we go? Like give me anywhere, like unlimited funding, whatever. Just let's go to the best possible place for freediving, and we couldn't find an answer to be quite honest. So if you have one, maybe you can tell me.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if at some point I have the funds, I will try to find it for you, and I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah. Please do.
I was just reading an article about Indonesia, that they are, they have something like 18,000 islands in Indonesia, and 60% of them don't even have a name and have not even officially been claimed by the country. So they're trying to do some kind of survey now that they can find all the islands and give them names and make it official. But surely out there somewhere is some little volcanic crater or blue hole or something like this with 150 meters, and yeah.
Hopefully that one has a little bit better visibility than Dean's Blue Hole, where you You're just plunging into a pitch black abyss. Yeah.
Do you see freediving as a kind of like a spiritual discipline, or is it for you more like a sort of a sport and training and physical challenge?
No, for me, particular freediving is a sport as any other sport. It is equal to swimming or to running or to whatever you want. I mean, okay, maybe there is a little bit more of mental part because you ain't gonna be breathing and you need to dive 100 plus meters below the surface when you are far from air and pretty much everything that you know. But in general, it's just a sport, and you need to be an athlete, and you need to be well trained, like in any other sport.
Like freedivers tend to fall into one of two camps. They seem to either be the more kind of spiritually oriented, mentally focused yoga types, and then you have the kind of like hardcore trainers and the people who are into systems and who are into numbers and things like this. So you would fall in that category, in the latter category.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not to be like a slave to numbers or anything like that, but definitely hardcore training. I mean, nowadays there's like, if we are being honest, nowadays even if somebody tells you that he is really into yoga and meditation and stuff, there is no way that that particular person is gonna be top 5 on a planet if he doesn't train hard. Just ain't gonna happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's at this point you need, or maybe you don't need, but the best freedivers eventually will be the ones that have the kind of the fine balance between the two, right?
Well, yeah, let's say. I mean, it's in any sport. I mean, there is no high-level competitive disciplines in any sport that doesn't contain mental aspect within. Like, you need to be mentally ready for anything and everything. Even for chess. I mean, you need to be mentally ready for a game and for everybody watching your moves and stuff. So just mental aspect is within any sport, not just freediving.
So talking about chess, what other kind of activities do you like to do outside of freediving? I mean, I imagine that you probably hardly have any time outside of freediving, but if you do have time outside of freediving, what do you like to do?
Take naps and be lazy. I don't know. I like physics and astronomy. On top of that, I don't know. I just watch Netflix, chill, play basketball sometimes with my friends, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been known to read a book or watch a movie.
You say you like physics and astronomy. This is like one of my favorite subjects.
Maybe we can do podcasts about that.
Yeah. I'm really like. Do you have any like recommendations for like YouTube channels or something like that, or books or documentaries in that area?
Oh, well, I don't know. So now I have not been back because I'm freediver. I can't remember anything. But first thing that pops to my mind is Vsauce. Then there is Isaac Arthur. I don't know. Have you heard about him? That's pretty unknown in physics and astronomy. It's Isaac Arthur. Yeah, podcast, actually YouTube channel, and it's really good. Once per week, every Thursday, he pops up a new episode about something. Like just this week, it was interplanetary warfare, and he goes really into details about physics and specifics of everything, and that's really good. And not many people knows about him.
Oh man, I'm so excited! Like I'm desperate for a new kind of like physicsy astronomy kind of podcast, so I'm gonna get on that straight away. Yeah, I don't know if you ever saw the World Science Festival has some quite nice lectures too in that area.
It's a YouTube channel?
Yeah, well, it's like a festival that happens once a year. It's quite a big, well-known festival. They have
videos on YouTube? Or?
Yeah, they put the entire lectures on YouTube. So if you go to World Science Festival and look at their uploads, they have some really nice, like long. They'll have like a panel of experts will come on and discuss something like gravitational waves or neutrinos or something like this. Completely boring for most people, but if it's your thing, then
for me that's exciting. That's like
for me too. Yeah, it's like I can't get enough of it. But I've already watched all the videos, so I need something new now. So check that out.
Yeah, it's a problem. At some point, you just watch pretty much everything, and then you just go again watching the same things over and over. But I'm gonna say check that out. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, check it out. There's another good one as well. That's the Royal Institution, which is a really old science organization or establishment in the UK, and they also have really good videos like this, like nice long lectures where you can learn about really, really deep science. Do you have a morning ritual? Something that you do every time you wake up, like something that starts your day? The same thing every day?
First thing that I do when I wake up, I go and pee because I'm old already. So that's the thing that I do. But no, I don't really have a morning ritual. When I'm home in Zagreb and training, I basically wake up, get dressed, brush my teeth, and go to the pool. That's it. That's pretty much every morning. Other than I don't really have rituals in general for anything.
And yeah, so I've already heard that you like the physics and astronomy, and got a recommendation there for a podcast. I'm not sure how many of the other listeners will appreciate that, but I always ask, like, if you have a favorite book or an author or books that you recommend.
Now when I tell you my favorite book, you're gonna be surprised, and everybody will be surprised, and gonna sound uneducated. I have many favorite books. Most of
Harry
them
Potter?
are... No, it's not. There are many favorite books. Most of them are popular science, but this one it really blew my mind. It's Undisputed Truth from Mike Tyson. I don't know, have you read that? Probably you didn't.
I haven't heard about it. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think he's a really interesting character.
It's amazing book. It blew my mind. It's the title. It's really describes the book perfectly. It's really undisputed truth. It's everything in there. Like you probably can like try to imagine what kind of life Mike Tyson had, and then when you read the book, it's like you can multiply that by 100. The book is just amazing, and I think everybody should read that book.
So, what are your plans for the future? I mean, like, what are your plans for this year? And then, like, do you have like a plan for like the long-term future, like the next 10 or 20 years?
No, not that kind of guy. I don't really make that kind of long-term plans. For now, I'm just focused on this training is going to happen in the next month and CIMA's Depth European Championship. And after that, I'm going to probably start preparing for Dubai and that static competition that's going to happen over there. And after that, I'm going to decide, will I compete in pool next year with depth, or it's just going to be depth year. So that's pretty much it. I don't plan any further than that.
As far as your training goes and your competition goes, you'll plan ahead a little bit for that, but you don't have any kind of like plan to start a Goran Čolak empire at the moment?
No, I just see where the life's gonna bring me. I just kind of go with the flow. I try to not worry much and not plan much, because most of the time when you try and plan things turns out completely different than you imagine and plan. So I just go with the flow, and we'll see. It's gonna be good. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be good. You are an instructor trainer. Do you ever have any time at the moment to teach courses, or is that something that's just like on the back burner at the moment?
Well, it is on the back burner. I mean, I don't really do any like F2, 3, 4 courses. Every now and then I can do instructor course, because like working with people that already know a lot and that can actually like ask proper question, and that you can actually teach them something good that's gonna help them. That's okay. And sometimes I do workshops as well, working with people that gonna improve their trainings and stuff. But other than that, I don't really have time to do normal courses.
So if people want to find you, Goran, where can they find you on social media? And do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's gorancholak.me. And I have a Facebook page, my name as well. So that's, I guess, the easiest way to find me. It's not that hard nowadays to find somebody, so I'm sure if somebody wants to find me, it will do that fairly quickly.
Goran, thank you so much for taking the time, and it's been really interesting talking to you. Like, I really like to get into the sort of like the nitty gritty of the training and this kind of stuff. A lot of people have been asking for an episode like that, and I think you're the perfect guest to give a bit of insight into that side of freediving. So it was really good fun talking to you, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. For sure. Yeah, if there will be interest, then you will be interested for sure. Yeah, and thank you for having me one more time.
So that was Goran. I'm looking forward to Goran making some big waves in the depth competitions in the coming years. What did you think of the show? Let me know. Add me on Facebook. My name is Donny Mac. I'm on Instagram as Donny McFar, and I'm here to answer questions and listen to your suggestions for how to make the show better. Remember to subscribe to the show through your favorite podcast provider so you don't miss an episode, and share the Freedive Café with your friends. Until next time, dive safe.